I caught my wife cheating with my friend in the middle of the act. I'm 55 years old and my ex-wife is 50. We were married for 23 years and together for 25 years. Let me give you some background on myself. I grew up as a farm boy in Alberta, Canada, working at my parents' dairy farm. Later, I moved to Ontario to attend university, where I earned a bachelor's degree in electrical engineering. After graduation, I returned to Alberta and began working in the oil industry, specifically in automation for large-scale oil processing facilities and drilling operations. The job paid well, allowing me to purchase a house in the city. I was introduced to my ex-wife by a coworker. She worked as an accountant in the finance department of a major retail company. We hit it off right away and started dating, eventually moving in together and getting married after 2 years. During our time in Alberta, we welcomed 2 boys who were just 19 months apart in age. Around the 5th year of our marriage, my ex-wife received a promotion that required us to relocate to the company's headquarters in Ontario. I decided to resign from my job and we made the move together. We rented out our Alberta house while purchasing a new one in Ontario. I found a new job specializing in automation for manufacturing facilities. Meanwhile, my ex-wife quickly climbed the corporate ladder and is now a high-level manager in the same company. We were both financially successful and enjoyed a comfortable lifestyle, going on frequent family vacations, regularly upgrading our cars, and paying off our house loan quickly, leaving us virtually debt-free. Our social life was vibrant, with many connections from our university days and my wife's childhood. However, in 2016, everything took a turn for the worse. I was unexpectedly laid off from my job, received a diagnosis of type 1 diabetes, and returned home early one day after running errands only to discover that my wife was having an affair with my best friend and college roommate. I caught them in the act, and it was a devastating blow. He was part of our friend circle, tall, handsome, and had a history of infidelity from his previous marriage. He fit the archetype of a player. She pleaded and uttered the same cliched lines they all do. How she still loves me, how it was a terrible mistake, and how we can work through it because our marriage is her top priority, and all that blah, blah, blah. I couldn't fathom the idea of reconciling, constantly living as a suspicious guard, obsessively searching for signs of betrayal in our relationship. I know my self-worth, so I made the decision to kick her out of the house and initiate divorce proceedings. I reached out to our kids who were in university at the time and informed them about their mother's actions. This revelation strained their relationship with her, although she argued that my approach was unnecessary and petty. I also contacted our mutual friends to share the truth, and to my surprise, most of them were already aware of the affair. One even revealed that it had been going on for 3 years. I felt completely blindsided, perhaps because I was naive and had complete trust in my then-wife. Upon learning this, I chose to go no contact with my ex, allowing all communication to be handled through my lawyer. I severed ties with them all, never speaking to them again. During that period, I experienced depression, uncontrollable rage, and had difficulties sleeping and eating. It was the most excruciating pain I had ever experienced, and I never want to go through it again. The memories haunt me in my nightmares at times. However, one day I realized that I couldn't continue feeling sorry for myself. I decided to find ways to keep my mind occupied. I took up jogging and exercising, discovered the joy of cooking as a hobby, and embarked on learning how to play the guitar. These activities served as distractions from the painful memories. Playing the guitar in particular was a tremendous help. It was challenging to master, requiring hours of practice, but it kept me from dwelling on the past. One of the first songs I learned on the guitar was The Sound Of by Jan Arden. It's a powerful song about recovery that I highly recommend. Another thing that brought me solace was getting a Rottweiler puppy, the same breed we had on the farm when I was younger. My ex never liked pets, so we never had one before. Taking care of the puppy became a source of comfort and distraction for me. The responsibility of caring for it gave me a sense of purpose during the tough times. As for the divorce, we sold the house and split the equity, divided the money in our savings account. Fortunately, our retirement savings were equal, so there was no need to divide them. After the divorce, I returned to Alberta, where I had a house and started my own successful consulting business. Even in the midst of a recession, I've managed to thrive. I sold my house and purchased a new one in Canmore, nestled at the base of the majestic Rockies. Now I have the beautiful woods as my backyard. I've never been much of a social media person, so it was effortless to not follow my ex-wife or be curious about her life. I don't even have a Facebook profile. In 2018, I returned to Ontario for my son's graduation, and coincidentally ran into my ex there. She asked if we could meet up for coffee to catch up since I was in town. I simply replied that I'd rather be in hell with better company and proceeded to ignore her for the remainder of the ceremony. Both of my sons have since relocated to Alberta and now live just 40 minutes away from me. My ex-wife was undoubtedly surprised by the distance between us. With Ontario being a 4-hour plane ride or a grueling 36-hour car journey away, it's been challenging for her to visit the kids. Despite the positive aspects of my life, not everything is as rosy as it seems. I've been unable to enter into another relationship. Trust issues have plagued me, and I've come to the conclusion that it wouldn't be fair to my partner. As a result, I made the decision to stop dating altogether. I may be alone, but I don't feel lonely. I have found genuine happiness in my life, even without someone to share it with. To all of you in this sub, my heart goes out to you and what you're going through. I can testify that it does get better. And even if you find yourself alone like me, it's far better than living with a cheater and the lingering presence of their betrayal. Update. Hey there, folks. I wanted to reach out this time to seek some advice. Last Sunday, I was helping my youngest son move a sofa he bought from IKEA to his place using my truck. During our conversation, he mentioned that his mom, my ex-wife, wanted to talk to me. Now, my sons are well aware that they shouldn't share my number with her, so they passed along the message. It's been quite some time since I last spoke to her, specifically since my youngest son's college graduation. And honestly, I never had any intention of speaking to her again. But I must admit, her request piqued my curiosity. Why now, after all this time? Does she genuinely want to apologize? Or is it just about clearing her own conscience? So I've been pondering over the idea of giving her a call while Outside by Stain keeps playing in my head for some reason. Update. I want to express my gratitude to all of you for your advice. Your comments truly help me clear my head. Following your recommendations, I approached my youngest son and asked for my ex-wife's email address. I created a new Yahoo Mail account specifically for this purpose and reached out to her to find out what she wanted. She responded with an email. After exchanging the usual pleasantries, she delivered the unexpected news that my ex-best friend had passed away from a heart attack last month. In response, I composed the following message to her last night. Dear Satan's spawn, I'm at a loss for words, except maybe Mazel Tov. Right now, my heart is already grieving for the recent loss of Prince Philip, Duke of Edinburgh, so I find it hard to mourn for him. I found out my wife has been having a secret affair for 1 year, so I got revenge on her. Oh boy, she didn't see that coming. Back in 2008, during my time in school, I crossed paths with this incredibly awesome girl. Let's call her CR. I was 21 years old and she was on the verge of turning 19. And together, we experienced the feeling of love for the very first time. We were attending the community college, pursuing different paths. I was into theater design while she was studying education. Despite living about 30 minutes apart, the distance was merely a minor inconvenience as we made sure to spend every available moment together between classes. Now that I reflect on it, that bit of distance between us actually had its perks. It allowed us to concentrate on our studies and take care of ourselves when we were apart. Plus, the anticipation of visiting each other's homes made those moments all the more meaningful. In 2009, CR completed her associate's degree and made the decision to transfer to a state school to pursue her degree in early childhood special education. Despite the distance, which was just a short train ride away, I made it a point to spend 1 or 2 weekends a month with her. Then, on Valentine's Day 2010, I got down on one knee and proposed to her. I wasn't really cut out for school, so in May of that year, I made the decision to enlist in the USAF. Suddenly, I found myself being stationed in a place that neither of us had ever expected to visit, and it was halfway across the country. But just like before, we were determined not to let distance stand in our way. It's important to mention that her mom was not a fan of mine. I have no idea why, but she was always incredibly loud, rude, annoying, and disrespectful. She was from the city, while her family had been farmers on the land since the 1870s, so maybe that played a role in her animosity. For the purposes of this story, let's refer to her as Evil Bitch, or EB for short. Another important detail to note is that I have a fantastic memory, and this will come into play later on in the story. Moving on to my military experience, I had a 2-week break between my training and being deployed to my first and only duty station. It so happened that this break fell during the Christmas and New Year holidays. Although we were engaged, we hadn't really discussed the specifics of getting married. She preferred a small ceremony with just her family and cousins, while I was perfectly fine with a courthouse wedding to keep things simple. I don't want to give the impression that I was pressuring her into it, but in my mind, getting married meant I would be eligible for a full monthly housing allowance, which would be helpful since I would soon be living in the barracks. I planned to save the allowance to have a proper wedding ceremony when we had more time, maybe in a year or two. In the end, we decided to get married secretly without informing anyone, as we knew our families would be upset about not being involved. The plan was to have a later fake wedding ceremony where both our families and friends would be included. However, things didn't go as planned. When it turned out that I couldn't collect the housing allowance because I was living in barracks, the military authorities discovered my marriage 6 months later and forced me to move out and find a house on base. Despite this, we didn't tie the knot during my home leave, and instead embarked on a cross-country journey via Amtrak train. If you have the time, I highly recommend experiencing a cross-country train trip. The first opportunity we had to reunite was during her spring break in early March. It was then that CR and I decided to elope and got married at a courthouse. We spent the following days enjoying each other's company, just like any young married couple would. In June, I returned home for a couple of weeks, and that's when things took a turn. During that time, my wife volunteered as a counselor for a summer camp organized by Easter Seals, which caters to special needs kids. I dropped her off at the camp after celebrating her birthday together, and little did I know it would be the last time I saw her that summer. Throughout the rest of the summer, it was a hit or miss trying to get in touch with her. She was fully dedicated to her role, being on the clock 24 hours a day for 5 days a week. Taking care of those kids, I understood and respected her commitment. Once she returned to school in the fall, though, I noticed her growing distant. She would often use the excuse of her phone randomly dying at strangely predictable times every week. However, she did fly out to spend Christmas with me in our new, albeit modest, duplex. During that time, everything felt amazing, just like before. But after Christmas, she reverted back to her reclusive ways from the previous semester. Let's jump ahead to May 2012. I took a whole month of leave to fly back home for her graduation and to help her move in with me. But when I saw her, she seemed like a completely different person. Every interaction with CR felt forced and insincere, and looking back, I should have realized something was seriously wrong. She had arranged these so-called mock interviews with a couple of grade schools near her hometown, and I genuinely believed she was just trying to gain interview experience. Boy, was I naive. As I started to catch on to how determined she was to secure a job in our home state, she broke down in tears, making it seem like I was forcing her to choose between me and her career. Naturally, I wanted to prioritize our marriage above all else. I went back to base alone, feeling completely shattered. A couple of weeks later, I couldn't take it anymore and confronted her, demanding to know what the hell was going on. That's when she confessed to having fallen in love with one of her fellow camp counselors and carrying on the affair for about 9 months. She claimed she wanted to tell me but didn't know when, feeding me that usual, too guilty to tie your own shoes, bullshit. And then, she actually expected me to just walk away from our relationship right then and there. No way. I fought tooth and nail to hold us together for 2 more months before finally filing for divorce. I'll spare you the sappy details. But the divorce was officially filed in late August and became final in December, as there was a mandatory 90-day waiting period in my state. Experiencing the agony of that one-sided relationship is something I wouldn't wish upon anyone unless they truly deserved it. It turns out that E.B., my soon-to-be ex's mother, whispered all sorts of lies to her, falsely claiming that I joined the military to escape from her. Can you believe that? And to make matters worse, she had the audacity to blame me for all the crying and misery her oldest child was going through. My ex never admitted who was behind all the blame, but I had been so close to her dad and siblings that it's hard to imagine they would suspect me. However, E.B. was incredibly manipulative, and by Halloween, they had all turned against me. That was the breaking point for me. I was on the verge of ending myself, and my anxiety attacks were hitting me almost daily. I was utterly miserable, tired of being deceived, tired of the slander, tired of being painted as the villain when I was the one who had been attacked in this situation. I began by sending text messages to her brothers and sister, revealing the truth. "Hey, I'm actually your brother-in-law. Nice to know that we don't keep secrets, right?" CR exploded with anger, but that was only the beginning. I took matters into my own hands and wrote an extensive 3,000-word letter detailing every single aspect I could remember about what had transpired. Our marriage, including copies of the marriage license and certificate, our plans for the future, and how I was the only one fulfilling our expectations. I also included information about where she had met the man she was cheating on me with, his name, address, phone number, the name of the camp counselor, so CR would find it harder to deny. Additionally, I shared other information she had made me keep secret from them. I sent copies of this letter to every member of her extended family, at least those I had addresses for, her roommates, the summer camp she worked at, professors she had mentioned in past conversations, and even the principal of the school where she ended up teaching. The aftermath of my actions was nothing short of catastrophic. Her deeply religious Catholic family practically disowned her. Her reputation at her previous school was irreparably damaged, and the tension at her new job became so intense that CR was forced to resign before the Christmas break began. As for me, finally unburdening myself from those secrets was an incredibly cathartic experience, one that brought me a sense of relief like never before.
Alright, everyone's presentations are done. Nick, the manager, said as he tried to move the discussion forward. Excuse me, I haven't. I recently found out something. Nick interrupted me and began to speak. There's apparently someone in this department who didn't graduate high school and is just a part-timer. Meetings should be for employees only. Absolutely right. His lackey, Mike, of course, agreed with Nick. I'm leaving. After leaving the meeting room, I started to shut down my computer. I noticed that an email had arrived, not in my personal inbox, but in the company's shared email. Thinking, there's no point in speaking up, no one will listen, I went home quietly. The next day, I heard a commotion from Nick's desk. He was staring at his computer screen, his face pale. Nick? Is something wrong? Mike looked at the screen with him. And he turned even paler than Nick. Why is he so angry? Knowing the reason for Mike's distress, I thought to myself, serves them right. My name is Adam. My mother passed away when I was in the 9th grade, and I was raised by my father. Well, you could hardly call it being raised. After my mother passed, my father changed. He drowned his sorrows in alcohol, and though he still went to work, he squandered our living expenses on horse racing. Because of that, I had to start working part-time as soon as I entered high school. Every month, I went to the convenience store with bills in hand that couldn't be auto-deducted from my father's account. Even though I endured it because I didn't want to be alone, I reached my limit in my second year of high school and dropped out. I found a live-in job at a distant inn. Thank you for everything. The day I left home, my father, still staring at the TV, spoke. Take care. That was our last conversation. Back then, 18 wasn't the age of majority, so I needed my father's permission to work, and I couldn't hide my place of employment. Yet, my father never visited me even once. I kept working just to survive, and before I knew it, I was 42. Years of hard work paid off, and I was transferred to the headquarters. I was thrilled to be recognized by the company, as I thought I'd be working in the field until retirement due to my lack of formal education. Listen up. Our work can change the future of our employees. Don't drag us down. On my first day after the transfer, Nick, dressed in an expensive suit, spoke sternly. There was a reason for this. Our inn was located in a prominent tourist destination, known so well that everyone in the state could sing its commercial jingle. At its peak, we had 5 locations within the state. But that was long ago. Due to financial difficulties and aging facilities, only the place where I had worked for many years and the original establishment remained. I was prepared to lose my job anytime, but now there was a glimmer of hope. With the rise of social media, the tourist area where the inn was located started gaining attention again. Depending on how hard the sales department, where I was transferred, worked, we could either thrive or be forced to give up this prime location to the new hotel chains continuously popping up. For Nick, who had switched careers from another industry to strengthen our sales, this was a battle he couldn't afford to lose. I understood why he had to be strict. I will do my best. Nick sneered at my enthusiastic declaration. Did you not hear what I said? I'm sorry. I thought I was listening carefully. Out of habit from years of customer service, I apologized reflexively, though I had no idea what had offended him. Someone was watching me with a smirk. In this department, there are those who are expected to excel and those who have been shoved here because they have nowhere else to go. You are the latter. It was Mike, the section chief. He's 7 years younger, at 35. But he was called to headquarters much earlier than I was and had been moving around within the headquarters ever since. I'm not jealous, but I can't accept that he's my boss. Graduating from a prestigious university, he has an unusually high pride and caused many problems as a newbie, making things very difficult for me when I was the front desk leader. When I found out Mike was transferred to the sales department a month before me, I was disheartened. Mike is right. With just a middle school diploma, there's not much you can do. Don't even think about achieving results. As if I didn't exist, Nick remarked, I'm thirsty. Mike eagerly ran to the coffee maker. It seems Mike is Nick's lackey. I regretted being happy about my transfer to headquarters, wishing I had stayed on site forever. Send a direct mail to every company on this list by the end of the day. Nick only assigned me tasks that even a new graduate could handle. What? There are over 1,000 companies. You want me to send to all of them by today? Yes, if you and your fellow misfits split the work, even those with nowhere else to go should finish by today. I glanced at the employees typing away expressionlessly. They were worn out from customer service, only thinking about leaving on time, or were women reassigned after having children, with zero motivation for work. Even Sam, a new graduate from the same university as Mike, who was supposed to be among the expected achievers, had no enthusiasm for the job, having joined the company wanting to do customer service. I don't care what they say, I plan to quit anytime, he said. Only Nick and Mike were highly motivated, making all the decisions between the two of them. I originally only wanted to work at the inn to survive and had no particular attachment to this job. I swallowed my words, thinking I had no right to reprimand them. About a month after the transfer, Nick told us with a frustrated look. To commemorate the 50th anniversary, we've decided to create a plan exclusive for one group per day. Originally, Mike and I were supposed to come up with it, but our president, Mr. Thompson, insists on hearing everyone's opinions. So, you all get a chance. As Nick explained, Mike began handing out prints. Make sure not to embarrass Nick. If your ideas are half-baked, you'll have to redo them. It seemed that they had printed his handwritten notes by Mr. Thompson, which included several questions and a section for free responses. It made sense why Nick had to seek our input, given that all responses had to be submitted to Mr. Thompson. We were given a week to think about it, and a meeting was scheduled to compile our ideas. My plan is to let guests enjoy both the old and modern America. Nick began the presentations. Guests would watch a master confectioner at a nearby traditional sweet shop make sweets in front of them. The welcome drink would be premium tea in a bottle. Nick's plan was certainly attractive. After his presentation, Nick called on us to present in the order we were seated. Just as I stood up for my turn. "All right, everyone's presentations are done." "Excuse me, I haven't. I recently found out something." Nick interrupted me. "There's someone in this department who didn't graduate high school and is just a part-timer." He was likely talking about me. I joined the company as a part-timer and was made a full-time employee when I turned 20. That was 20 years ago, so Nick and Mike probably had no chance to know until recently. Meetings should be for employees only. Absolutely right. After that, Nick kept creating opportunities to solicit everyone's opinions, purposefully excluding me from speaking. The meeting unexpectedly heated up and went past the scheduled end time. A few people asked to leave, and the discussion continued with the remaining few. "Still here?" Normally, you'd leave in that situation. Though I had no attachment to the job initially, hearing kind words from customers made me want to make them happier. For someone like me, with nowhere to go, the inn was my home and customer service was my life. I felt pathetic about my current self. "I'm leaving." I left the conference room and started shutting down my computer. I noticed an email had arrived, not in my personal inbox, but in the company's shared email. Thinking no one would listen to what I had to say anyway, I quietly went home. The next day, while preparing the DM as instructed, I heard a commotion from Nick's desk. In his haste to stand up, he hit his knee on the desk. He stared at his computer screen, his face pale. "Nick! What's wrong?" Mike, thinking he should be the first to rush over, approached Nick while still wearing his coat. He peered at the screen with Nick. And he turned even paler than Nick. Why is he so angry? Who is responsible for this company? Nick, more irritated than ever, asked, and Mike answered without checking. Probably Sam. Sam wasn't there because he was attending a morning training session for new hires. Nick gave up on getting angry and returned his gaze to the screen. They were looking at an email that arrived right after the end of the working day yesterday. Apparently, no one, including me, had checked it before leaving. The email was from a large company that used us for their annual employee trips. The president and executives of that company also frequently used our services personally. President of the company, Mr. Mason himself, had declared that neither he nor his company would ever use our services again. Well, some companies cancel their employee trips or stop using our services due to financial struggles. Let's just move on. Mike kept wiping the sweat from his forehead with a handkerchief. Knowing why Mike was so agitated, I quietly watched their interaction. "Do you know how much revenue we get from that company? We can find other guests to fill the rooms, but we'll lose the banquet costs, gift shop revenue, rental car fees, and more. Moreover, the gifts were supposed to be prepared by the traditional confectionery shop involved in Nick's proposed plan. If it's known that we incurred such a huge loss at this critical time, Nick's position in the company would be jeopardized." Nick took a deep breath, seemingly trying to calm himself. "All right, Mike. Go to New York right now and apologize to Mr. Mason." "What? You're coming with me, right? I have urgent work to do." "I trust you, which is why I'm entrusting this to you." "Please." Mike, believing Nick's sincerity, agreed with a determined look on his face, saying, "Yes. That's Nick for you." Even if Mike went to apologize, Nick would shift all the blame onto him if the client didn't change their mind. Well, it was Mike's fault to begin with, so it served him right. About 3 hours later, Sam answered a call from somewhere and repeatedly apologized, saying, "I'm very sorry." Everyone watched to see what was happening. After ending the call, he informed Nick with a weary tone. When Mike arrived at the client's company, he only made things worse, further infuriating Mr. Mason. He was demanding, "Get his boss here immediately." It was no wonder Sam was exhausted, dealing with such a call right after returning from training. "What is that idiot doing?" "All right, Adam, you're coming with me. If sacrificing Mike didn't work, then I must be next." Normally, I'd want to refuse at all costs, but I saw an opportunity in this situation. If I can be of assistance, I'd be happy to join you. I immediately followed Nick, and we flew to New York. When we introduced ourselves at the reception, it became clear how serious the situation was, as the receptionist personally escorted us to the president's office. Angry voices leaked through the door, making both Nick and me uneasy. "Excuse me. I'm Nick, the supervisor. I understand my subordinate has caused you trouble, and I deeply apologize." Nick, with his experience in the corporate world, knew enough to offer an apology before excuses. However, his customer service skills left much to be desired. I sighed as I saw Mike trembling like a small dog in the corner of the room. "What kind of training are you giving your subordinates?" Mr. Mason glared at Nick with a red face. The intensity of his gaze made even Nick take a step back. Regrettably, I joined this company only 2 years ago and was unaware of Mike's issues. I should have identified his shortcomings sooner. Indeed, I should have realized sooner. No sensible person would come to apologize and then give a lengthy presentation on the drawbacks of not using their in. Nick froze, his mouth slightly open. Suspecting the worst, I picked up the documents that had fallen to the floor. It seemed Mike hastily prepared these documents on the plane, listing the disadvantages. Disadvantage 1: if you change the venue for the company trip, employees might suspect it's for cost-cutting reasons, leading to a negative impression. Reading it aloud half-jokingly, Nick snatched the papers from my hand and checked the contents with a furious expression. Among the stack of documents was a receipt from a nearby convenience store's copy machine. I felt a pang of dread, hoping he hadn't shown the receipt as well. What do you think he said when I asked what kind of nerve he had to do this? I'm very sorry." Faced with the dire situation, Nick must have thought there was nothing left to do but apologize. In a voice smaller than I'd ever heard from him, he uttered words of apology. He said, "I'm a Harvard graduate. I don't believe I said anything wrong." "Mike, what have you done?" Forgetting his plan to pin the blame on Mike, Nick yelled loudly, even in front of Mr. Mason. "I didn't do anything wrong." "You're still saying that? Look at him." Mike pointed at me with a shaking hand. "I was assigned to headquarters in my 20s and now I'm a section chief. This guy only made it to headquarters at 42. Everything I've done proves I was right. So why are we losing the contract?" Having said his piece, Mike collapsed to the floor. "Of course. You were sent there because you had nowhere else to go." Mike never expected to hear such words from someone he looked down upon. He lunged at me, and Nick hurriedly stepped in to stop him. "Mr. Thompson told me Mike is a quick thinker, and to take good care of him." There's no way he was pushed aside. "Don't make things worse here. He didn't say quick thinker, he said only quick-witted, didn't he?" I don't remember that part." I recalled the many troubles Mike caused when he was a newbie. When Mike was on the front line, his pride was so high that he never apologized to customers. Customer service, especially in our job, doesn't work alone. It brings both good and bad situations. If the front staff or housekeepers made mistakes, or the cleaning company didn't properly clean a room, one had to apologize to the customers regardless of personal fault. Mike, in such situations, would never apologize, insisting he wasn't at fault. This often angered customers, and as the front desk leader, I frequently had to apologize on his behalf. He caused complaints and disrupted operations, which is why he was quickly moved to headquarters. In departments where he didn't interact directly with customers, his quick thinking was beneficial and things went well. But it seemed his flaws were starting to show. Corporate reservations are supposed to be entered into the system by the sales representative. But a quick check yesterday revealed that more than 10 items were missing from the client's reservation. The handover document clearly stated what needed to be prepared. Why didn't you enter it into the system? Why do we have to give them special treatment? Filling rooms near the banquet hall, setting up all the food in advance. Specifying the brand of wine, they're too demanding. No wonder he always angered customers, I thought, feeling a headache coming on. Grouping them in rooms near the banquet hall is for our benefit too. It makes it easier for the staff to set up beds and serve breakfast since everyone's schedule is synchronized. As for the other requests, Mr. Mason suggested them to lighten our load. I didn't know that. Nick finally seemed to realize that Mike was the one who had angered the client. What did you say to them? I just told them we wouldn't give them special treatment anymore. We shouldn't waste effort on things that don't bring in money. I was utterly exasperated at his lack of understanding of customer service. Of course, we shouldn't comply with unreasonable demands. But carrying over successful practices from past stays makes customers feel remembered and enhances their experience. Good memories encourage repeat visits. That's part of our job. I looked down at Mike, who was sitting on the floor. In our job, nothing is a waste. Mr. Thompson likely moved you to the sales department, hoping you'd finally understand this. How do you think he feels now that you failed to meet his expectations? Mike, tears in his eyes, fled the president's office. I was amazed he still hadn't apologized. You have it tough, Adam. It's okay, we're all employees of the same company. I deeply apologize for this disrespectful incident. Especially after all the care you've shown us. If it weren't for you, Adam, I really would have stopped staying here. When I heard you were moving to the sales department, I was willing to reconsider if you handled it. Seeing us talk so amicably, Nick's face contorted. Do you two know each other? Adam's service is excellent. I always requested him specifically. Normally, we don't accept specific staff requests, but we made an exception for Mr. Mason, adjusting my shifts accordingly. He had personally stayed at our hotel just before my transfer, and during casual conversation, I mentioned, I'm moving to the sales department soon. If I hadn't told him then, things could have been much worse. Please continue to take care of us. I look forward to it. On the return flight, Nick awkwardly offered me a can of beer. It's still working hours. Of course, I had no intention of forgiving him for a single beer. Nick might try to pin everything on Mike and avoid any consequences. While pondering this, a startling fact came to light. Nick, the tea bottles for the plan have arrived. I handed Nick a bottle labeled with our inn's name. They look good. What are you talking about? These are plastic bottles. I had assumed we would use the trendy, high-end bottling tea. But what arrived were ordinary plastic bottles of tea with customized labels. The only unique aspect was the label, which had the inn's name, making it look customized. Upon further investigation, I discovered that a substantial amount of money was set to be paid to the tea company. It was priced like bottling tea. Does this plastic bottle really cost $100 each? The tea inside is specially blended for us. The extra cost is for that. Wouldn't it be better to use another tea company? Or is there a specific reason we must use this one? As Nick continued to make excuses, I showed him a printed email. I informed the tea company's president, Mr. Mitchell, that we discovered irregular payments and he confessed. He said you two were high school classmates and planned to split the extra money. That idiot. Why did he confess? That's not important. You should worry about yourself, this could turn into a police matter. Opening the bottle cap, I suggested. How about calming down with this tea? It supposedly has a relaxing effect. Nick drank the tea frantically. In the following days, decisions were made about their fates. Mike was reassigned to the General Affairs Department, with no chance of transfer or promotion, as per Mr. Thompson's orders. As for Nick, since the payment to the tea company hadn't yet been made, he narrowly avoided legal trouble. Instead, he was encouraged to leave the company, and to avoid further complications, Nick submitted his resignation. Rumor has it that connections between HR departments have made it difficult for him to find new employment. Even though it was good to have those two gone, something unexpected happened in the sales department. Everyone became motivated and united in refining the 50th anniversary plan. In the end, my plan was adopted. We collaborated with the Tourist Information Center to provide personalized guides. The plan, tailored to the number of guests, was truly special for the 50th anniversary. Hey, is Adam's family coming to stay? I immediately booked that special plan for my family. Sam noticed it on the reservation list and quickly picked up on it. Yes, I'm inviting my father. That's great. I might invite my parents too. I lacked the courage to face my father just as Adam. But here, with the confidence Mr. Mason praised, I felt ready. The 50th anniversary plan was a perfect opportunity to reconnect with my father. I hoped to bring back the days when we could laugh together as we once did.